Greetings, I'm your host, Dr. Wolfyland. When I'm not giving my thoughts on unreleased movies based on their marketing materials alone because my fan base can't seem to wait, I'm here at the Wolfy Lair, actually reviewing those movies when they're released. Yeah, so, after years of anticipation and fears, the new Halloween sequel, simply titled, Halloween, is out. I saw an advanced screening of it at my local theater with mixed feelings about how it would turn out based on the trailers. The other controversy among fans was the bold decision to erase all of the sequels, including the fan-revered 2, making this new Halloween technically the new Halloween 2, essentially. So, was it all worth it in the end? Is co-writer Danny McBride's and co-writer/director David Gordon Green's take on Halloween a worthy successor to the original that deserves to share that title? How does it compare to their other film, Your Highness? Why am I asking so many rhetorical questions? Well, I'm gonna say up front that this isn't gonna be one of my long, comprehensive vids. This isn't my definitive review or nothing. I just watched the movie in the theater to watch it. I didn't take notes, I didn't have the luxury of pausing the film to soak in details, and until the flick is out on video, I don't have all the clips to really do an ultimate review yet. Also, the movie just came out, so I might need some time to properly reflect on it, but I'm gonna deliver the best review I can with what I got. Let's get started. Well, the new Halloween not only takes place in yet another continuity, but it also kinda retcons the ending of the original movie. Not long after Michael seemingly disappears into that Halloween night of 1978, Dr. Loomis and the police apparently apprehended the Shape, and Myers was returned to Smith's Grove Sanitarium, where he remained for an even longer haul of 40 years. Now, admittedly, Michael being captive for this long and only having killed a handful of people is a little lame. It's kind of like, if you think about it, Christopher Nolan's Batman only being active for maybe a little over a year. It's sort of disappointing, but I have to say, it kind of manages to separate Michael from all the slasher killers he spawned by taking the original Shape back to square one and reassesses what made Michael work in the first film when he was institutionalized evil that managed to escape and wreak havoc in a mask. Michael's menace is given more retrospective credibility through the story of two British journalists who, through the aid of Dr. Loomis's successor, Dr. Sartain, visit the Shape near the date of Halloween, 55 years after Myers, as a boy, killed his sister Judith.
We're here to investigate a patient that killed 3 innocent teenagers on a Halloween in 1978.
Actually, the journalists are true crime podcasters. It's 2018. They're basically making Serial, but with Michael Myers. I'd actually totally listen to that. Though, they kind of picked a poor subject for a podcast since Michael does not fucking talk at all, despite their attempts to coax him.
Say something, Mike.
The movie stylishly recaps the events of the original film through these two hosts, but really, that's all this couple is.
You feel it, don't you, Michael?
They're just used as a narrative device to reintroduce Myers and his world. Oh, and they also hooked Michael up with his trademark mask. Saved him a trip to the hardware store. I don't even think they sell Halloween masks at hardware stores anymore. I just feel like more could have been done with the podcasting duo, exploring the idea that they become a part of the story they're trying to report, and presenting an arc showing a change of perception of Michael from just being a killer to something larger than life.
Michael Myers is a human being who killed his sister when he was 6 years old.
The crass sensationalism of the podcasters does lead to them inevitably crossing paths with the real heart of the film. The one survivor of Michael Myers' 1978 rampage. Laurie Strode, played by Jamie Lee Curtis once again.
We just want to know why. We want a glimpse inside his mind.
Michael Myers murdered 5 people. And he's a human being, we need to understand.
Now, this is pretty controversial among Halloween fans. Laurie is back from the dead. Again. Yeah, like I said, this film takes place in yet another new continuity, but I don't blame McBride and Green for having it take place in a new timeline. If this flick took place in one of the pre-existing timelines, they'd either have to take 2 hours explaining the Cult of Thorn, or 3 hours explaining why Busta Rhymes was in a Halloween movie. It would be very tedious either way. The thing that really irked a lot of fans, though, is what taking Halloween 2 out of the picture did to Laurie's and Michael's relationship, or lack thereof. They're no longer brother and sister. And you know what? I'm fine with that. The two were never conceived that way to begin with, and Carpenter only introduced the idea because of writer's block. I like Michael Myers kept simple as the boogeyman, not some guy who's fixated on killing family members on Halloween. I mean, Haddonfield is a small town, they could still be siblings, but beyond a little reference, the movie just flat out doesn't address the familicidal aspects of Michael for the better.
She was almost murdered.
Wasn't it her brother who murdered all those babysitters?
No, it was not her brother. That's something that people made up.
Still, I was apprehensive about Jamie Lee Curtis returning. It seemed like the movie would potentially be retreading Halloween H2O through its story of an aging survivor girl stricken by PTSD and with a family to protect. Honestly though, I feel like this movie has a better take on it that's just more interesting, making it worth revisiting the concept. Really, H2O was an attempt to grab the Scream audience and make Halloween hip and trendy during the 90s. It just hasn't aged too well. It feels like this go around, Jamie Lee Curtis delivers a much more sincere take on her iconic character's journey after the first movie that's far more poignant and dynamic. Laurie in this incarnation hasn't just been sulking for 40 years. I mean, she has been a bit, but more than anything, after her encounter with Michael, she's just become pissed. The shape shattered her worldview and changed the course of her life to one of preparation, isolation, and vigilance, becoming a gun nut in the off chance that Michael might escape again. The real tragedy of Laurie Strode is how this affected the people around her. She raised her daughter Karen, played by Judy Greer, from a young age to be ready in case she ever encountered Michael or somebody like him, and it drove a wedge between mother and daughter later down the line.
The bus crashed.
Mom, what bus crash?
Laurie spends her days in solitude outside of her hometown of Haddonfield as a hermit walled off from society, with barely any contact with her granddaughter Allison, played by Andi Matichak.
All this hiding, all this preparation, it was for nothing. I mean, it took priority over your family. It cost you your family.
Essentially, Laurie is the new Dr. Loomis in spirit, a diehard advocate for Michael's total annihilation, but the film does a great job of exploring the impact of this obsession. The alienation of loved ones, the loneliness, the lack of closure, it's tragic.
Do you know that I pray every night that he would escape?
What the hell did you do that for?
So I can kill him.
There's a great emotional scene that ties Loomis and Laurie together through their common hatred of Michael and how it consumed them both. I would have loved to see Donald Pleasance's character explored with this much depth, but Jamie Lee Curtis is fantastic in this role and was the real standout of the movie.
The way I raised your mother means that she hates me, but that she's prepared for the horrors of this world, then I can live with that.
I'm not gonna lie, I was moved to tears in a few key moments during this movie. Sir, you cried during the movie? This is not a fucking sort of podcast, Goulash. Get out of here. Anyway, I feel like the character of Laurie Strode is finally done proper justice. She's so much more entertaining to watch than ever before. Laurie isn't lying around in a hospital bed, dead from a car crash, sulking in a private school, or languishing in an institute. This time, Laurie is a fighter from the very beginning, who takes action, and Curtis delivers a fierce performance with a lot of heartbreaking tragedy. Ultimately, it's great to see how much Laurie has grown.
They're transferring him.
Tomorrow, 7 o'clock.
He'll be locked away until the end of his days.
That's the idea.
Ultimately, Laurie is, of course, unfortunately vindicated in her prediction of Michael's escape when he, well, escapes. During Michael's transfer to a maximum security prison, the bus transporting Michael mysteriously crashes and Michael is free to wander on Halloween once more, killing random motherfuckers with a kitchen knife, but not without retrieving his mask and grabbing another unfortunate mechanic's jumpsuit. Okay, I was concerned going into the flick that it would heavily mimic the original, and I've seen some comparisons to The Force Awakens, but I feel like that's really unfair and inaccurate. Besides the basic premise of an escape killer on Halloween, the movie goes in totally new directions and has a different structure from the original. Michael does come across a babysitter, but she's a minor character. Besides a few nostalgic homages covered in the trailers acknowledging past entries in the series, this Halloween sequel has its own identity, at least as much of an identity that a sequel can have. Now, Michael is on the loose, doing his thing, but Laurie is busy hunting him, along with the typical somewhat competent Sheriff Hawkins, who was actually present for Michael's original escape in '78. The duo are also aided by Michael's current doc, Sartain, a student of Loomis's. All of these characters know exactly what Michael is capable of. It's the current generation, though, that's at risk, as Laurie's unprepared, estranged granddaughter Allison is in the shape's sights. The cast surrounding Jamie Lee Curtis is fantastic as well. She really brings out the best in everybody's roles. Ultimately, Laurie is the focus, but Judy Greer is wonderful as Curtis's daughter, Karen, who's totally resentful for her grim childhood.
Have no security system, Karen.
Mom, you need help.
And Karen's husband, Ray, played by Artie, the strongest man in the world himself, Toby Huss, is a great comic relief. Andy Manichak is also good as the granddaughter Allison, who is pretty different from Laurie as a teen. More extroverted and in an active relationship, actually going to parties. Allison herself has a great group of supporting characters through her friends, aka the unfortunate teenage victims. They're integrated well in an organic way and feel like real modern teens. Jabrail Nantambu is also a surprise delight as Julian, a boy that Allison's friend nannies, who has some really fucking funny lines. I would have liked to spend more time with quite a few of the characters, but I liked everybody in the cast and almost didn't want to see anybody die. But you know, those kills, man. Speaking of which, how is Michael handled, the horror? Really fucking well. Under the advisement of the original Michael, Nick Castle, Myers feels the most like the shape he has since the original. Michael is played by James Jude Courtney this time around, and while he does move a little too stiffly here and there, this is probably the scariest Michael's ever been. I was actually really unnerved by Michael. He was unpredictable again and just brutal as hell as this old bruiser. I do feel like the movie went a little too far with the gore in a couple places compared to the relative bloodlessness of the original, but, you know, gore is a crowd pleaser. I also kind of feel like the movie gets a little too big for its britches with some elaborate set pieces. I would have been satisfied with a bit more of the minimalism that the original had, especially to make this film a bit more symmetrical to the first film. I do like how this flick brought back the jack-o'-lantern intro in a creative way that's very symbolic of how this film takes the series back to its roots. Of course, John Carpenter acted as executive producer, having an advisory role for the first time since 3, but his real major contribution was scoring the film along with his son and godson. There are some new takes on the classic tracks that sound modern and vigorous, but there are also some new tracks that are hauntingly atmospheric. The score for this flick is excellent. Carpenter really delivered. The fact that Carpenter returned at all really gives this flick an added layer of authenticity and completes the experience. Now, before we end here, I'm not gonna go totally into heavy spoilers. Again, I'm saving a comprehensive review for a time when I have everything I need to do it well, but I will say that I feel like there were a few plot contrivances in this flick I took issue with. Michael coincidentally comes across and kills mostly characters close to Allison when he seemed to just be randomly targeting people. The flick could have used more of a structure to Michael's stalking, like in the original where he targeted Laurie and her friends, in order to have all of his killings make a little bit more sense. Otherwise, the body count is a little forced, like in some of the more Friday the 13th-esque sequels. There's also kind of a twist near the end that had me a little nervous that this flick would go in a really wacky direction, but it ended up okay in the end and made sense. Speaking of the ending, Michael's and Laurie's final showdown is incredibly tense and satisfying. I don't know how they're gonna make the sequel work, but I'm definitely curious.
Michael!
I really did thoroughly enjoy this new Halloween film. I feel like David Gordon Green did justice to the original, and I think it should please newcomers and non-jaded Halloween fans. As a fan of the series, I was pleased. I had a few minor issues, but nothing I'll fucking lose sleep over. The movie was just a great time overall, and I can't wait to see it again. Definitely recommend. I give, Halloween a cop jack-o'-lantern out of Activia. That shit is good, and is good for shit. I got peanut butter on my penis. If you like this video, be sure to like it, but if you loved it, make sure to subscribe to me, Dr. Wolfula. Oh, and keep in touch with me on social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Dr. Wolfula. Be sure to also help support the channel in any way you can, especially by donating to my Patreon, where you can keep up with me, get exclusive content, and talk to me directly. Finally, I have some new merch available on TeePublic, so if you'd like to wear some Dr. Wolfula or even goulash swag, head on down there. Of course, the channel wouldn't be possible without all the support I've gotten from my fans on Patreon, and I'd like to thank these folks for helping me make this happen. It really is an honor to make content for so many swell people, and I hope to do you guys proud in the future. Thanks to all of you once again from your old pal, Dr. Wolfula.